Good evening, everyone. We'll be getting started shortly. We ask that you keep your microphone on mute during the time of the forum. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Franklyn Bourne Bar Association Professional Development Committee's Attorney General Candidates Forum. Please note that this forum will be recorded. My name is Dawn Ellison, and I am the chair of the Professional Development Committee. I will be the moderator for tonight's event. I would like to thank Chandrika Rennell, Kimberly Lewis, and Ruth Adamate for their assistance with preparation and execution of this event. The Franklyn Bourne Bar Association is presenting this forum as for educational purposes only and does not endorse any of the candidates for Attorney General. All Attorney General candidates were invited to participate in tonight's event. And we have 3 candidates who have graciously accepted the invitation and are here tonight. I'll briefly go over tonight's forum. After a brief introduction of each of the candidates, they will be permitted 2 minutes to describe their key points of their platform. After the introduction, I will ask the candidates approximately 7 to 8 questions from a list that was sent to all of the candidates ahead of time. Each candidate will have approximately 2 minutes to respond to each of the questions that are asked. If time permits, the attendees are permitted to submit questions to clarify or follow up to any of the responses provided by the candidates. And attendees are to do that via the chat to either of the host or co-hosts. And at the end, the candidates will have 1 minute for closing remarks. So participating in tonight's forum, we have Congressman Anthony Brown. Congressman Brown has spent 3 decades as an attorney and has served in the Maryland House of Delegates as Lieutenant Governor of Maryland and in the United States Congress. Congressman Brown, if you could give us your key points in 2 minutes. I'm going to cue up the timer here. All right. If you can unmute.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks to you and the members of the Franklyn Bourne Bar Association. I'm running because I believe Marylanders deserve an attorney general who will be their advocate for change with a record of progress on tough issues. Today, too many barriers exist for Marylanders. Many of them are rooted in racial bias and systemic racism, from healthcare and housing to the environment and education. We see it in the workplace, policing, and the criminal justice system. So I'm running to dismantle those barriers, to make government work again, and to fight for the changes that will protect every person and empower every community. I'll be the people's lawyer, investigating problems, advocating for legislative change, and setting enforcement priorities to serve the people. I'll fight for justice and equity, whether addressing crime and public safety, the climate crisis and environmental justice, or attack on women's reproductive freedom. I'll fight to protect consumers and veterans and seniors, as well as voting rights, workers' rights, and the rights of the LGBTQIA+ communities. And I'll hold public officials accountable, including law enforcement. The Attorney General's office needs an experienced leader with legal, executive, and advocacy experience. As the chief legal officer in Maryland, I'll never stop working for those who I serve to investigate problems and advocate for bold solutions. I'll fight for progress, I'll fight for justice, and I'll fight for all Marylanders, and I'll do it always through a lens of equity, inclusion, diversity, and fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Judge Katie Curran O'Malley. Judge O'Malley began her career as an assistant state's attorney. In 2001, she was appointed to her first term as a district court judge for Baltimore City and was reappointed in 2011. She retired in 2021. Judge O'Malley, you have 2 minutes to share the key points of your platform.
Thanks, Dawn, for moderating this. And I want to thank everyone from the Franklyn Bourne Bar Association for being here this evening to hear us talk about why we want to be your next AG. You know, I'm running for a lot of reasons, but mostly from all that I've learned over the past 30 years of really living and working in Maryland's courtrooms and working with the people in Maryland as a problem solver. You know, first decade as a prosecutor, where I tried hundreds of cases in front of judges and juries, helped navigate, victims navigate the criminal justice system, worked with defense attorneys to come up with solutions for their clients where we could keep the community safe, but also address what was causing them to break laws. And then for 20 years, I presided over thousands of cases in the District Court of Maryland, where I not only heard criminal cases, but I also worked in civil law, negligence laws, contract laws, landlord housing disputes, housing disparity issues in Baltimore City, working with the Baltimore City mayor to get funds for people who needed to stay in their homes during the pandemic. These are all problem solving issues that I've been dealing with for the past 30 years. And the next attorney general needs to have that trial experience where you're not just promoting good laws, that's an aspect of the job, but you're actually using the laws and strategizing with the attorneys in the office that actually go to court. They go to the district court, the circuit court, the courts of appeals that we have too, the Court of Special Appeals and courts of appeals. 40% of the work that's done in our courts of appeals are all done by assistant attorney generals. And if you've never tried a single criminal case in Maryland, you're not the best leader to help navigate the cases that are going to be argued in our appellate courts that even go to the Supreme Court, issues involving the Fourth and the Fifth and the Sixth Amendment. But also I want to run for this office so I can protect our environment, which is, as we know, climate change is real. And also with the surge in violence, we need to reform our criminal justice system, but keep people safe at the same time. So I look forward to a robust debate or a forum. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And now we have Mr. Attorney Jim Shalleck. Attorney Shalleck has served as a local, state, and federal prosecutor for 24 years, and most recently served as the president of the Montgomery County Board of Elections. Mr. Shalleck, you have 2 minutes to share the key points of your platform.
Well, first, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. My goal and my priority is to use the Attorney General's office in the fight against violent and repeat crime. There's 450, 460 lawyers in the AG's office. I want to take about 10%, maybe 45, 50 lawyers. The AG's office is an army. They've got that many lawyers and hundreds of investigators and non-legal personnel. I want to use that portion of the office to go into counties and cities where the violent and repeat offenders are not being prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law by state's attorneys. I want to assist or replace those state's attorneys that are not fulfilling their obligation to go after the most violent and repeat offenders. With those offenders which we'll carve out of the system, no plea bargaining, no deals. No, I want to assist in the fight of crime. Well, why have an attorney general's office with an army of lawyers and non-legal personnel if we can't use it to help in the fight against crime? I was a prosecutor for 24 years, chief of homicide of the Bronx DA's office. I prosecuted the Son of Sam killer for 3 murders in the Bronx. I know the sound. I know the sound the mother makes when I had to tell her over and over that her child was murdered. So this has to stop, and I want to use our office to that effect. That's my priority. All the other functions will be handled, but that's a priority that we have to use this office for. So thank you for having me, and thank you for having this discussion.
Thank you. First question will go to Judge O'Malley. On the current Attorney General webpage, it states that the Attorney General is the chief legal officer of the state. Can you describe what makes you uniquely qualified for the role of Attorney General? And you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Dawn. I believe I'm uniquely qualified for the role because of all the variety of issues that I've worked on through our Maryland courts for the past 30 years and the agencies that I've worked with in making sure that the laws that are on the books are being used. You know, for 30 years, I've been working in courtrooms, for the first 10 as an advocate, and then for the remaining 20 as presiding over cases in the district court. And as the chief law enforcement officer of the state, you're not just enforcing criminal laws, you're enforcing civil laws as well. And you're using trial skills and trial advocacy as an attorney to make sure that the laws are being enforced in the best way possible for all Marylanders. You're also working with each state agency to make sure they are getting the best advice from the attorneys so that when they are performing their jobs for Marylanders, because all the agencies serve Marylanders, that they are getting the best legal advice possible. You know, there are 450 plus lawyers in the office. They're split up amongst all kinds of different units. There's 19 different separate units in the AG's office. No one specific individual candidate can have the subject matter expertise for each unit. But what you need to have is the trial experience, when to know how to try a case before a jury and rather than a judge. What's the best strategies to use when you're making decisions as to settle or not settle, knowing what would happen in trial. Because of all the years that I've spent in courtrooms, I believe most uniquely qualified for the position. Like I said in my introduction, I've tried hundreds of cases in front of judges and juries and then presided over thousands of cases in the district court. And there are cases involving domestic violence. There are cases involving mental health, emergency petitions for mental health clients. There are cases involving Veterans Treatment Court, our drug treatment courts, and truancy. There are very complicated issues that come before our courts. And I've been there for 30 years in the courts. So I believe I'm the best qualified to lead these lawyers when we're making decisions about litigation, as well as giving advice to all the state agencies.
Thank you. Congressman Brown, same question.
Thank you.
Do you need the question or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
I got to see your clock. Is your clock up?
Now, go ahead.
Got it. You know, I believe I'm uniquely qualified, and for a number of reasons. One is I think I'm the only candidate for Attorney General that possesses not only the legal experience, but also the executive experience to lead an office of 700 legal professionals in service of the people of Maryland. You know, the Attorney General's office is the largest public interest law firm in Maryland. It's got responsibilities, as so many of you know, ranging from procurement to the promulgation of every state regulation, the oversight of the MBE program, to consumer protection, criminal law, environmental law, health and labor law. I've been a lawyer for almost 30 years. I've been involved in cases in state and federal courts and in military proceedings. I've tried cases, I've appeared in appellate litigation. I've represented clients against big tobacco, small businesses against giant corporations, defended the constitutionality of federal laws that restricted gun sales. I've represented criminal defendants and children in need of assistance. And I've been involved in multi-party litigation, class action litigation, and multi-million-dollar settlements. These are the types of cases, the big cases, that the Attorney General's office is involved in. I'm the only one that's got executive experience, not only as Lieutenant Governor leading state government, which is the primary client of the Attorney General, but also in the Army. I commanded a unit of 80 legal professionals supporting soldiers in criminal defense, legal assistance, and consumer protection matters. And I've also been recognized for my pro bono legal representation to indigent clients. So I'm proud of my record of delivering results, both as an attorney to clients and as a lieutenant governor, executive experience, and in Congress and Annapolis with advocacy experience.
Thank you. Mr. Shalleck, same question. Describe what makes you uniquely qualified for the role of Attorney General. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, as I said in my opening, my priority will be helping to reduce crime in Maryland. I moved here about 32 years ago to work as a prosecutor in the antitrust division of the Justice Department, working with teams of lawyers taking on industries, motion picture industry, generic drug industries, in price fixing and bid rigging cases throughout the United States. Before I came to Maryland, I was an assistant attorney general in New York State, about 6 years, doing white collar prosecutions, judicial corruption, tax evasion, fraud. And then before that, for 12 years, I was an assistant district attorney in the Bronx, New York. No better place to learn how to be a prosecutor than the Bronx. 50,000 arrests a year, then 400 murders a year. Then I was promoted to chief of homicide after 10 years in the office. I was chief of homicide of the Bronx, supervised 20 lawyers, 80 detectives in the prosecution investigation of over 435 murders a year. I prosecuted David Berkowitz. I led that team for the prosecution of him for 3 murders in the Bronx. So I've been there. I've seen what crime has done, what evil has done to families. And that has to be our priority. A family that's devastated by murder or rape, when they wake up in the morning and they open their eyes, that second, until the second they close their eyes at night, they're not thinking about climate change, the inflation, or the price of gas. No. And we have to use the Attorney General's office to fight crime. All these other functions will be done. There's over 400 lawyers. But crime has to be our priority. And I'm the guy that's been there. And I want to help do it. And that's why I'm running. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Shalleck.
Okay.
Our country has dealt with a number of mass shootings that have occurred in a variety of locations. Could you explain how your administration plans to address gun control measures within Maryland?
I don't see, oh, I'm waiting for the clock.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no, thank you. Well, I support the Second Amendment. However, I don't believe that requires or mandates someone having a howitzer or a flamethrower in their backyard. No, but I support the Second Amendment. And my view is that when someone is caught using an illegal firearm, that they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Guns are no good in the hands of criminals. No plea bargaining, no deals. And I expand that on environmental criminals and criminals that pollute the air and the water. Criminal prosecution is the only deterrent to these kinds of criminals. Fines and consent orders, no. No, these corporate criminals, they go right out to their 3-martini lunch after they pay $1 million fine. Jail is the deterrent. And I want to use that component in the Attorney General's office to deal with criminals of all kinds. Election law violators, environmental law violators. These people are very bad. And they have to be treated with criminal prosecution to deter others and to adequately punish them. I'm not Attila the Hun. That doesn't, I'm not saying jail's the answer for every wrong that people do. Young offenders, drug offenders, mentally ill offenders, we're not talking about jail for them. But these people that harm our families, they have to face the consequences of criminal prosecution. And that's the personality that I want for our Attorney General's office. And I've got the experience to do it. And that's, again, why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Brown, same question.
Thank you. Look, gun violence is a plague in our communities, and it has torn many families apart. And for too long, we've seen senseless gun violence in schools, place of worship, neighborhoods, public spaces, and we can't normalize this. Just a few weeks ago, I helped pass into law bipartisan legislation that strengthens our nation's gun laws, including closing the intimate partner loophole that allowed certain domestic abusers to purchase weapons. Now, we've taken bold steps in Maryland to address gun violence, but I think we can all agree that more needs to be done, particularly in the wake of the Supreme Court's latest decision regarding concealed carry laws. So as Attorney General, I'll dedicate resources to crack down on ghost guns and to expand the size and scope of the organized crime unit that focuses on gun trafficking, among other things. Enforce Maryland's red flag law and expand its scope to include school officials who can petition a court for an extreme risk protective order. I'll work with the General Assembly this next legislative session to expand the list of sensitive locations to ensure that guns, particularly those that are carried in a concealed manner, stay out of our schools, theaters, parks, and other public places. I'll work to bolster our background check system and requirements, specifically the training requirements for concealed carry. And I'll work with the General Assembly to ban all, not just some, but all semi-automatic long guns. As Attorney General, I'll hold gun manufacturers liable for the death and destruction of their weapons, with a focus on ghost gun manufacturers. I like what I'm seeing in Baltimore City with Mayor Scott, and also guns that are used particularly in mass shootings. And I'll continue the work that I started in Congress, whether it's on the ballistics imaging program or promoting micro-stamping requirements so we can track shells to guns to criminals. So I'm going to use the platform of the Attorney General to advocate for change and to enforce the strong laws that we have in Maryland, as well as make them stronger.
Thank you. Judge O'Malley, same question. Let me
Sure, well-
reset the timer. Sorry.
So I don't see the time. There it is. So gun violence is a national epidemic. It certainly, we feel the effects of it in Baltimore, in our state, every single day. We have tragedy after tragedy involving illegal possession of firearms, sometimes legal possession of firearms. Certainly the automatic rifles that have been causing these tragedies all across our country should not be in the hands of any private citizen. I don't care what the Second Amendment says. I don't believe our forefathers ever imagined these weapons of mass killing should be something that everyday citizens should be able to possess. Whether they're 18 or 21, it doesn't really make a difference. They are still out there, and we need to do everything we can to get them banned federally, to work with Congress to make common sense gun laws. And I will do that. But quite frankly, you know, these other firearms are being used all the time, every single day, these non-automatic firearms, the ghost guns, the Glocks, and the illegal possession of these firearms needs to be enforced. And I know that. I've tried these gun cases as a prosecutor, and I've presided over, again, cases as a district court judge, when how violent in our city has been, that there's never, ever been a person that would never go before me in a gun case. Because they knew for a plea, because I wouldn't take a plea. They could go to trial and be found not guilty. That happens because sometimes people are not guilty, they're presumed innocent. But it's really important that we enforce the good laws that we have on the books. I also would like to see a federal regulation. It's called the PLACA, the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, repealed. It was issued in Congress in 2005. And I think that legislation is the only legislation that protects manufacturers from civil liability when their weapons are being used in a dangerous way. There is a way to pierce it through the consumer protection laws of Maryland. And I think that's how they got I know that's how they got the Sandy Hook settlement, but we need to get these guns, again, off the streets to keep citizens safe.
Thank you. The next question will go to Congressman Brown. With the recent Supreme Court decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization to overturn Roe v. Wade, the majority opinion noted that nothing in the court's opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. Justice Clarence Thomas, in his concurring opinion, stated, "For that reason, in future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold v. Connecticut, Lawrence v. Texas and Obergefell versus Hodges. Because any substantive due process decision is demonstratively erroneous, we have a duty to correct the error established in those precedents. The question for you and the other candidates is, if elected Attorney General, how will you ensure protections of substantive due process rights for all Marylanders? And give me a second to get the timer up. You may begin.
So first of all, in overturning the long-standing precedent in Roe, the conservative justices on the court made clear that many established rights could be in jeopardy. The liberty and privacy rights associated with contraception, associated with defining one's own relationships and certain private consensual decisions, and even the fundamental right to marry regardless of gender and perhaps even race. We should also anticipate the further erosion of federal voting rights and civil rights. So Maryland has to remain a safe haven, particularly now when it comes to this substantive right for all women seeking abortion services and other reproductive health services. With the expected rise in out-of-state patients, we need to continue expanding our women's health infrastructure. Additionally, Maryland needs to reaffirm its commitment to choice by codifying the protections of Roe into our state constitution. I testified in support of that during this past General Assembly. As Attorney General, I'll defend anyone coming to our state for reproductive services, protecting them against prosecution. And I'll do whatever it takes to ensure that no personal data collected in Maryland can be used by another state trying to prosecute someone for having an abortion in Maryland. As Attorney General, I'll issue opinions that seek to expand access to abortion care and contraceptives, as well as ensuring that women are defended against any effort to restrict, limit, or eliminate their reproductive health rights and choices. For example, Governor Hogan is withholding $3.5 million appropriated by the General Assembly to train certified health professionals on providing abortion services. As Attorney General, I'll look for ways to ensure that no governor can withhold dollars for essential health care, such as Governor Hogan is doing. And I'll certainly partner with like-minded attorneys generals across the country to make sure that we are participating in every action that seeks to roll back the substantive right based on privacy and liberty of women's right to choose.
Thank you. Judge O'Malley? Same question.
Sure, thank you. I'm unmuted, right? You can hear me?
Yes.
All right, so the timer's up? Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
thanks. So this is a real setback that we've seen for girls and women across our country. And I know how much of a setback it is because my mother and grandmother told me stories about what happened to their friends and family members that couldn't get abortion services before Roe. So we're going back to that. And my mom's now 85 and she's just devastated, thinking what girls and women are going to be facing. So as the first woman Attorney General, I will do everything in my power and do everything legislatively as well with our House of the Delegates and Senate to make sure women who come here have a safe access, make Maryland a safe access state. And we can do that. We can do that by not honoring writs of extradition. If other jurisdictions want to have someone extradited because of their abortion laws being restrictive, we can also not honor subpoenas. Won't honor subpoenas giving medical information or data about individuals, girls and women who come to Maryland for these services. I will work with other like-minded attorneys general across the nation because there will be many, many battles that we're going to be facing as a result of what we've seen this Supreme Court do. Here, first with Roe v. Wade, well, prior to that with the gun, making wear and carry more easy for people, as well as what they've done with the EPA and saying that the EPA can't regulate fossil fuels. So there's a lot of work that will be done, and we're even going to face challenges in state. So making sure that we have the constitutional amendment added so that girls and women have this right here, and that it's not something that can change. You know, I'm so sick and tired of hearing men talk about this issue and saying that they want to protect women or we need to be protected. We really don't need to be protected. We need to be elected. Women need to be in the rooms where these decisions are being made, need to be in the legislatures, need to be in the Attorney General's office, and certainly need to be in all aspects where these decisions are made.
Thank you. Attorney Shalleck. Oops, give me 1 second.
Okay.
You may be. Uh-oh.
Okay, I see it.
Okay, let me reset it for you. I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm pro-life. However, I do sympathize and understand completely the pain that many women are going through because of this decision. I don't think any of the other judges, I could be wrong, but I don't think any of the other judges signed on with Judge Thomas's remarks, and I wouldn't sign on with them either. My view is the Attorney General is obligated to enforce the laws of the legislature that are signed by the governor, or not signed, but passed into law. And that's what I would do. My personal opinion doesn't matter. If the legislature and the law allows abortion, I will enforce it. I may not agree with it, but that's not my job. I'm not a legislature as Attorney General. And that's my view on this and others very sensitive topics. But when you're elected to high office like this would be, you can't bring your personal opinions into the office. And that's how I feel about this. And may not agree, but I'm not the legislature. And that's how I feel.
Thank you. Next question will be to Judge O'Malley first. Climate change and pollution is a growing problem. Some communities disproportionately experience the effects of pollution compared to other communities. If you are elected Attorney General, how will you address the adverse effects of poor air quality / pollution on low-income communities and communities of color within the state?
Thank you. Yeah, that is a big issue. And I tell you what I believe needs to happen is Maryland needs to establish in the Attorney General's office an environmental justice office. And in that office, include members from marginalized communities to participate and to bring voice to issues of pollution in their neighborhoods, not just in the cities, but in rural areas as well. You know, we have 75,000 toxic lead pipes that are still part of our infrastructure, and finding them and locating them and replacing them will be one of the areas that I will be working very, very hard with the Department of Environment on, because there's a lot of federal money that doesn't have to be paid back that we can use so that we can replace these lead pipes. I mean, we're facing an issue of drinking water having this toxic lead in it, and we could have an issue like Flint, Michigan, or Pittsburgh, or Washington, D.C. There's 4 other states that have all created this environmental justice unit or office in the Attorney General's office, and it would work with all the state agencies to make sure that everyone has a plan for environmental initiatives, and making sure that each agency is cognizant of how they can be more aware of the social costs of carbon. Also making sure that the new law is an exciting law that Maryland just passed, the Climate Action Now, that law is put in place so that we can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that are causing climate change. We have a very narrow window and time is running out. So we need to start using some of the great laws that we've put in place and making them enforceable. Using the school bus fleets now to be electric, all state automobiles to be electric has been a fantastic way of reducing fossil fuels and the greenhouse gas emissions. I also believe it's important that we work with agriculture and farmers so that we can incentivize them to do cover crops to make sure that they're not polluting our bay with toxic chemicals from their farms or waste from their farm and their farming, especially on the Eastern Shore and in Western Maryland. So those are some ideas that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shalleck, same question.
Just waiting for the clock. Here we go. Well, as I told you, I'm from the Lower East Side of Manhattan and the Bronx. So I'm not an expert in the environment. I don't think I saw a mountain until I was 12. And I would get experts to help me in that field. My view, again, I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but sometimes I have to be. To me, these the poisons that are put in our air and water, especially in minority communities, it has to stop. And these big companies that do that have to be deterred. And they're only deterred, in my view, by criminal prosecution or loss of license. Big fines, consent orders, to me, they don't do the trick. They're still billowing up all this crap over our cities. So I want to use, again, that criminal prosecution unit to go after polluters, major polluters, to deter them and to punish them adequately. I think those are the laws that work. You know, we have a lot of laws, intricate civil laws enforcement, but to me, it doesn't work. And I want to use that philosophy to take on these polluters. That's how you stop them. That's how you shut down the poisons that are being put into our air and water. And that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Brown, same question.
Thank you for the question. Look, every Marylander deserves access to clean water, clean air, the security of knowing that their future and their children's future are secure from not only climate change, but the activities that pollute our communities. For too long, Black and brown communities have been overburdened and underrepresented, and as a result, have been disproportionately harmed by pollution. So pursuing environmental justice for all Marylanders is a top priority. We have to focus on repairing the harms done by environmental hazards, air pollution, lead exposure, improper waste disposal that impacts tens of thousands of Marylanders every year. As Attorney General, not only will I deploy the Environmental Crimes Unit that goes after those who illegally dump and discharge and store hazardous materials, but I also will seek independent authority to investigate and enforce violations of environmental laws that aren't necessarily criminal conduct. Currently, the Office of the AG, their environmental enforcement authority relies on the Department of Agriculture or the Department of the Environment to bring them into an enforcement action. And that creates large problems when environmental enforcement isn't a priority for an administration. And we've seen that under both Hogan and earlier under Ehrlich. So during my first legislative session as Attorney General, I'll work with the General Assembly to ensure that environmental enforcement won't simply be based on who wins the governor's seat. I'll also build on the recently passed Climate Solutions Now Act and advocate for a law requiring the Department of the Environment to evaluate the environmental and public health impacts on overburdened communities when reviewing industrial and environmental permit applications, and deny those permits when the cumulative effect exceeds certain limits. So as Attorney General, our office will act with a sense of urgency every day to protect the environment for all communities in Maryland.
Thank you. The next question deals with police reform and accountability. Police reform and accountability and criminal justice system reform has been a hot topic within Maryland and the United States as a whole. For Congressman Brown, in your opinion, do you think the criminal justice system in Maryland needs reform? If so, please describe what areas of the system that you believe need reform.
Certainly, our criminal justice system is broken, especially for Black Marylanders and other communities of color. We rely on jails and prisons to be some of the largest mental health providers in the state, yet we don't properly even fund those services in our prisons. Maryland incarcerates the highest rate of young Black men in the nation, higher than Mississippi. Our recidivism rate is almost twice that of Virginia's, and our crime rate continues to rise. We need an Attorney General with the experience to lead reform efforts, not someone who's been a part of the broken system. While Maryland made progress in improving our bail system, greater reform is needed in a system that continues to disproportionately impact communities of color. Perhaps the biggest impediment to reforming the bail system is that many prosecutors and judges don't comply with the court rule promulgated in 2017. We have to make changes in the juvenile justice system to ensure that children taken into custody are treated like children, with full access to legal consultation, being advised of their rights before being questioned, and ensuring that their families are engaged in the process. We need to end the practice of charging children as adults for certain charges and establish a minimum age for the jurisdiction of children within the justice system. The Maryland General Assembly is making strong progress on juvenile justice reform. They did this year, and I look forward to working with them to continue to take steps forward. We also have to dramatically reduce Maryland's recidivism rate, and that means increasing investments in parole and probation services, including reentry programs, as well as expanding educational and job training programs during incarceration. We also need to ensure incarcerated people have access to behavioral health treatment and housing and employment services upon returning to the community. And lastly, we need to restore trust in policing and between law enforcement and the community, which means accountability. So as Attorney General, I'll be looking to reform the system, not from within, but an outsider looking at the system, understanding it's broken, and also having a demonstrated track record of bringing criminal justice reform on Capitol Hill and in Maryland.
Thank you. Mr. Shalleck, same question.
Well, I've always felt that reform comes with the sunlight. And I believe that more public participation is the key to opening up courtrooms, let people see what's going on in courtrooms. I think there should be cameras in the courtrooms. I think the judges, as Governor Hogan proposed, but it was defeated, judges should be accountable. We should know what the sentences are for all the judges, just listing them every month. What judge is giving what sentence? Is a judge giving everybody the maximum, or is a judge giving everybody probation? So I think we have to open up the courtrooms, get the sunlight in the courtrooms, see what the judges are doing. I think we have to show more respect for the police, give them the equipment and manpower they need. In terms of the disciplinary arm of reform, I think the public should be involved. Now they send out, videos of alleged misconduct and shootings. I think that's good. I mean, it's, the officers don't like it, but I think the more the public knows about an incident, I think the more trust they'll have in what the disposition is when an officer is accused of wrongdoing. Let them see for themselves what the investigators are seeing. So I think public participation is crucial. Sunlight, to me, is always the best way to get reform. Let the people see what's going on. Let them know what's going on. And I think with that, legislation will follow, and public participation in juries will increase, and the system will be reformed. But it needs the people to participate. And in the past, it's been too much of a secret. People really don't know what's going on. So I do propose that.
Thank you. Judge O'Malley, same question.
Thanks, Dawn. So, here in Maryland, Anton's Law got passed in 2021, and it was a law named after a young man who died in police custody in Caroline County, a tragic case. And the law does some sweeping reforms when it comes to criminal justice reform, especially with police accountability. It also takes away the police officer's Bill of Rights. It makes each jurisdiction in the state of Maryland have to have a police accountability board set up with strict parameters and quick and swift action. It also requires that the police officer's misconduct records be public if requested. These are all important steps. One other major area that it does is it requires now the Attorney General's office to investigate independently any one of these tragedies where a civilian loses their life as a result of police conduct. And the only thing the law didn't do, and I'm advocating for it when I'm the next Attorney General, is allow the Attorney General's office then, if they find the police officer or officers should be charged, then the Attorney General's office should handle that case, not throw it back to the jurisdiction and hope that they go along with the evidence and the decision of the lawyers in the AG's offices, the decision of myself. I've been in the criminal justice system for 30 years, as well as our civil system. And as a judge, I've seen criminal cases. And as a prosecutor, I've seen broken aspects of the criminal justice system firsthand. So I'm just not reading newspaper articles about it. I've actually seen it. And I've had trials, one specific trial where police officers, 2 of them, lied to me under oath. I reported it immediately and nothing whatsoever happened. Nothing. I found the defendant certainly not guilty. I reported it. I didn't get a letter, an email, anything. So I know that when regular citizens are making these types of complaints, that they weren't getting the responses. And there was a lot of mistrust with policing because of that. So working again to make sure that Anton's Law is enforced, and then we come up with more ways again to keep the community safe and the policing safe at the same time.
Thank you. The next question will deal with marijuana, and Mr. Shalleck, will go to you first. With the changes in law regarding marijuana use and the opening of dispensaries in the state, how will your administration ensure equitable access to marijuana dispensary business opportunities to minority-owned and women-owned businesses? Oops.
I think that's important. I mean, I don't know what the exact procedure is for assigning these licenses, but certainly equitable distribution is important. And I would promote that, and whatever role I could do, I would promote that. Personally, I'm not for the total legalization of marijuana. I think small amounts, users, the penalties should be decriminalized. There should be some kind of penalty, civil, requiring either drug treatment or fines or some kind of diversionary action to divert youngsters, especially, from moving up the ladder and going from marijuana to cocaine or heroin. So I don't think that that should be a criminal component, but I don't think it should be totally legal. However, with major dealers and distributors, I think a swift and harsh punishment is appropriate, because youngsters go from marijuana to harder drugs, and they drive, and people can get hurt. So I don't think there should be total legalization, but decriminalization is something I favor for users, young offenders, etc. But treatment is the key, and I would promote that. That's the key for young offenders, is treatment.
Thank you. Same question, Judge O'Malley.
Thanks. With the recreational use of marijuana, I actually testified in favor of that, because I found that it's, first of all, it's not a gateway drug. There's been plenty of science around that, but also because the marijuana laws have been used to discriminate disproportionately against people of color. And there have also been so many deaths that have occurred from people purchasing marijuana or selling marijuana because of the large amounts of quantity and product. So I'm happy that that's going to be law. What we need to do now, and actually Zanita Hurley, who runs the civil rights unit in the Attorney General's office, is working on this now to make sure, because minority businesses have been historically discriminated against, we are now making sure before these licenses are to be given out, because we can't keep out of state commerce from coming in. There's a commerce clause of the Constitution, but to make sure we insist that minority businesses provisions of law that are already in effect are being enforced, so that the people who have been disproportionately affected by these laws have a fair share. Marylanders have a fair share at this industry. So it's really important that we do that, get that set up before we then start allowing these licenses to be bid for. And that's, I believe, imperative, because we want to make sure that it's fair. You know, you don't want Walmart coming in and taking over the industry. So it's an area that I'm happy to see that the law passed. It's up for referendum in November. I believe it will overwhelmingly pass. It's going to reduce violence. And again, I've been a drug treatment court judge for many years. Nobody has ever come into drug treatment court because they were addicted to marijuana. We have decriminalized marijuana possession, and it's expungible now as well, so that people's records aren't keeping them back from getting jobs if they have marijuana possession convictions. So these are all steps towards making sure that there's equity and justice now that we have the legalization of marijuana.
Thank you. Congressman Brown, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, this year I testified in support of the bill that makes lawful the adult use of cannabis. I supported the decriminalization years ago. I supported establishing the medical marijuana regime that we currently have. And remember, when it first rolled out, going back to your question about equitable opportunities to participate, Maryland failed on that one. Maryland, as a progressive, forward-thinking state, needs to join the other states to legalize cannabis, but we've got to be the leader and the model in the country for how to do that. So I do commend the General Assemblies, their thoughtful approach to this issue. I commend them by sending it to the voters for referendum and ensuring that communities of color are treated equitably after years of disproportionate treatment under the law. So the next Attorney General is going to have an important role in developing and implementing the regulatory framework for the cannabis industry. As the Attorney General, I'm going to work to ensure that this new framework is equitable and fair, ensuring that economic benefits translate to women and communities of color. As Attorney General, I'll work with the General Assembly to ensure that we do a few things: create a fund to support small minority-owned and women-owned businesses entering the adult use cannabis industry, as well as support historically Black colleges and universities and business incubator programs. We also need to ensure that the communities that have been most negatively impacted by the outdated marijuana laws see the economic benefits of the new policies by creating impact funds, much like we did when we expanded game in Maryland. So I've got the experience. on these issues of bringing programs in, empowering communities, investing in them through the additional revenues generated. And as an advocate, a legislator, and an executive, I've got the experience to work with the General Assembly to get it done and to get it done right.
Thank you. And for our final question, we'll go back to our original order. So we'll start with Judge O'Malley for this one. It deals with healthcare accessibility. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed disparities within the healthcare system. As Attorney General, how will you combat the disparity in care and resources within the healthcare system in Maryland?
The AG's office does play a very big role in enforcing the laws through Medicaid fraud in the Medicaid fraud unit. It's an area where when people are being discriminated against because of their income, the AG's office actually goes after them. And so that's an area that they have lawyers that are there, they're trained, because oftentimes when your Medicare runs out and you're on Medicaid, the hospitals were then just putting you out in not in hospitals, but taking you to homeless shelters for some of these older adults who didn't have family that could take care of them. So it's an area that's very proactive in the Attorney General's office. You know, during COVID, we did see the disparities and how people were affected in our cities and in jobs where they worked, you know, because they had to still work. I mean, the courts didn't shut down, but I'm talking more about the individuals who were taking the buses, like courtroom clerks that worked with me, and they were scared to death, you know, and we offered rides for people. But we also saw what happened with our workers at the grocery stores that had to continue to provide those services. So making sure that there's more equity when it comes to the just basic healthcare rights is something that the Attorney General's office can really advocate for. Consumer protection laws can also be used to do that when it comes to healthcare disparities or fraud in the healthcare system. I mean, I had a case once as a prosecutor where a woman was in a nursing home and she was lured out by an individual who then murdered her. And the laws weren't in effect at the time, so that not only was she murdered after just dying of starvation, her pension was for 14 months being used by the family while she decomposed in the home, but nobody from the nursing home checked up on that. So the laws have changed now so that nursing homes must do that. And that's something that I would in fact enforce, so that when a senior does leave care and it's not with a family member, or even if it is, that there's follow-up to make sure that the individual is safe. Because I've seen firsthand the tragedies that can occur when an individual doesn't have the resources to take care of themselves.
Thank you. Congressman Brown.
Great.
Same question.
You know, health disparities, I've seen it since a kid. My father was a doctor. He saw patients in hospitals and his small medical practice in some poor neighborhoods, often never getting compensated for its services, but understanding the importance of bringing care and resources to underserved communities. You know, as Lieutenant Governor and a member of Congress, I've worked to address health disparities, recognizing that health disparities and outcomes is rooted in a lack of care. As Lieutenant Governor, I spearheaded the Health Enterprise Zone initiatives. It reduced health disparities, and it improved healthcare access, and it reduced the overall healthcare costs and hospital admissions. We were able to put that money back into healthcare. In Congress, I introduced the same legislation on Capitol Hill. As Attorney General, I'm going to ensure that the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit is focused on investigating and prosecuting health providers who try to defraud the Medicaid programs. Medicaid fraud is particularly insidious because it deprives low-income and other communities who rely on Medicare for access to affordable quality care. As Lieutenant Governor, I led the effort to pass Maryland's False Health Claims Act, which has returned nearly $200 million to Maryland since 2011, which in turn has been put back into providing health resources in underserved communities. So I've dedicated my career to champion communities in Maryland on Capitol Hill who too often feel forgotten, and for fighting for policies to close these gaps in opportunities and access to resources. So as the Attorney General, I'll continue those fights, and I'm going to infuse equity throughout government, including our healthcare system.
Thank you. set the timer. I want to say thank you to all of the candidates for participating in tonight's forum. Unfortunately, we will not have enough time to receive questions from our attendees. We will now ask each of our candidates to provide 1-minute closing remarks, and we will go in reverse order, starting with Attorney Shalleck, Mr. Congressman Brown, and then Judge O'Malley, and I'll set the timer.
Well, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed the dialogue. We touched on a lot of important issues. Let me say this about the last question. I have a zero tolerance for discrimination in any field. And if my office finds that there's a nursing home or Medicaid provider that's discriminating or there's bad care for patients, we can take away their license, suspend their license. We got to come down on these people. We have a lot of laws on the books, but we need laws with teeth. And these people make tens of millions of dollars a year. And if they're discriminating, or if there's poor conduct, we take away their license. We do other things to make them feel the pain. So I commit to that. You heard me many times. My view is that we have to use criminal enforcement for a lot of these wrongdoers. And I want to change the complexion of the Attorney General's office to implement that, to fight crime and all these other wrongs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congressman Brown. Oh, you're on mute. Let me reset. Okay, go ahead.
First, let me start by thanking you, Dawn, your colleagues on the Professional Development Committee, and all the members of the J. Franklyn Bourne Bar Association for hosting us this evening, for giving us an opportunity to talk about our qualifications, our experience, our vision, and our priorities as Maryland's next Attorney General. I can't emphasize more that the next Attorney General is not only bringing legal experience, but executive and advocacy experience. You know, often people ask me, what does the Attorney General do? I said, think of it as a large law firm with a diverse practice area. And a managing partner of a law firm doesn't necessarily come from the litigation group, could come from corporate or transactional. They could be an administrative attorney. It's someone who's got experience in managing people, inspiring people to do big things and tackle big problems. For 25 years in public service, I've been focused on tackling big problems for our country, our state, and my community. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge O'Malley.
Thanks, Dawn, and thanks to the other candidates. Thanks to everybody for listening here tonight. I'm excited about this race. Things, it's in a very important time now in our state and our country that we elect an Attorney General that has the experience that's necessary to be the lawyer for the state. You know, managing partners don't get to be managing partners without actually doing all the legwork for years. They work very, very hard in courts and in their areas of expertise before they get to that level. And the past 4 attorney generals in the state of Maryland have all had extensive trial experience. 2 of those attorney generals had no legislative experience whatsoever. I have the 30 years of working in courtrooms with real victims, real people, real problems. That's why I was endorsed by the Washington Post, as well as the Baltimore Sun and Senator Barbara Mikulski and the League of Conservation Voters, so just to name a few. So it's important that you have an attorney general that is your lawyer, your attorney, making sure she can go to court with her other lawyers, 450 every single day to protect Marylanders. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our candidates for participating in tonight's event. And thank you to all of the attendees. Be sure to vote. Early voting ends on July 14th and the primary is on July 19th. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.